Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Well, we are back on that highway, the highway to state by state, alphabetically, subscriber, Dogman submissions. Today, we are going to another East Coast hotspot state, the state of Pennsylvania. Before we get into that, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first Pennsylvania subscriber submission. This submission is the subscriber who sent the photo that you guys are looking at on this upload. If you look to the left and the right of this canine-like creature, you can see deer jumping. There will be an explanation in this submission about the photo. Hey Jeff, I'm the subscriber of your channel who wrote you about a cryptid encounter I had in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey during the winter of 2014 while I was living homeless in the woods. At 4 a.m. this morning, I was listening to your show that had the many hyena-like encounters in North America, both big and small. And it brought to mind a recent situation on my current property. Despite being homeless only 6 years ago, life has been pretty kind to me since. In the summer of 2018, my wife and I bought a nice home on 6.5 acres in a fairly affluent neighborhood in suburban Philadelphia. The town is pretty well populated, and a typical home there sits on 1/4 to 1/2 acre of land. My land is bordered by a few other large lots, as well as a golf course, which is also bordered by the only few farms that exist in the area. Finally, the golf course and farms butt up against a long, thin wilderness preserve that is crisscrossed with paved walking and biking paths for the hordes of people who live in the surrounding area. So, what I'm getting at is that my property is large for this area, and about half of it is wooded with huge 80 to 120 foot hardwood trees. Being that it's connected in one way or another with other open land areas, it is home to an abnormally large population of deer, as well as fox, raccoon, possum, squirrel, and woodchuck. All those tasty critters bring in the regular coyotes of the area at night as well. Due to the deer overpopulation problem on our land, my wife and I allow 2 of our friends to set up a corn feeder and a couple of tree stands to harvest a few deer for each season for themselves using crossbows. These guys have a few trail cams set up in the woods there to see what kind of trophy deer are frequenting the area, as well as to keep an eye on their feeder. Now, I have small children and I worry about them playing in the yard because of the coyotes, so I frequently patrol the yard at night with a .22 Magnum and a powerful pellet pistol to drive the coyotes away from my land, and just to let them know it's not a very safe place for them to hang out in general. Despite the game cameras everywhere, my buddies never managed to get any coyotes on film until January of this year. A trail cam that was aimed directly at the feeder finally captured a shot of what we all figured was a coyote and 2 deer hauling away from it. Except it doesn't look like a coyote to me. For starters, if you look at the 2 deer that are bolting away, one directly on each side of the canine in question, you realize that the animal is as tall as the deer it is hunting. The deer in my yard are well fed and fairly large. A dog that is as tall at the shoulder as a full-grown deer in my yard would have to be at least 100 pounds or more, if it was a thin dog. And there's the build of this supposed coyote. It's built more like a hyena crossed with a pit bull. Even its head is not that slender look of a coyote. Finally, it would appear, if you look closely, at its legs and chest have sort of a striped and speckled pattern to them. The height of the canine-like animal in the picture combined with the build leads me to believe that this is a big animal, maybe 120 pounds or more. Way too big for a coyote. Although it doesn't have a very rounded ear like a hyena, its body structure seems to resemble. Anyway, I attached the picture in question to this email, and I would value your opinion on the matter. Am I being silly, or do you think that maybe I'm looking at something weird? I suppose it could be a neighborhood dog on the loose, but it is clearly not. It has no collar, and I hear no barking at night from regular large dogs. And I don't know of any missing animals in the area. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Looks way too stout and strong build for a coyote, in my opinion. At first, you will think it's just a regular-sized canine until you see the bolting deer on each side of it, and put it to scale with them. Plus, the large log the canine is standing on, with its front legs, is from a huge poplar tree. It's probably 120 years old or more, and it is about 3 feet thick. Notice that the hooves of the deer on the right side of the picture are also even with the top of the log as well, and the deer is even closer to the camera than the canine thing, leading me to believe that the dog thing could be that much larger. Thanks for your great show and for giving people like myself a platform to get our stories off of our chests. It really feels good and is therapeutic to be able to talk or write about it without eye rolls and laughter. Now, when looking at this photo, I do see what he's talking about, and I do agree with him. America, or North America, had our own breed of hyena. It was very large compared to what is in existence this day in Africa. And they were bear killers, actually. Now, so many things have survived unnoticed. Who's to say it's not? I mean, to the north of us is a vast amount of wilderness. Those of you who are living in the United States, north being Canada, Alaska. Very easy for a large predatory animal to live unseen. Today's second Pennsylvania subscriber submission was one that I tried to get the interview to happen, but because of his career as a Pennsylvania state trooper, it didn't. But this is a very terrifying encounter that he had, and I've spoken with him on the phone and heard it from his own lips to my ears, and it was haunting. I only wish someday that this channel will be going on when he retires and we can get him on the show. But you know what? Those are dreams, I guess, right? Hey Jeff, I'm at work now. I'm working a double, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get back to you. I'm actually on lunch. Anyway, my name is Kay. I'm an African-American male, 34 years of age, 6'3", 275 pounds. I'm in shape. I've been in law enforcement going on 5 years now. I recently transferred to Pennsylvania about a year ago. 4 months after settling into Pennsylvania, there was a call through dispatch that came through as there was a minivan on the side of the road in a ditch. The driver believed he had hit a black bear, lost control of the vehicle, and went off the side of the road. And a few moments later, the bear approached the van, trying to get in. It was a husband, wife, and their 13-year-old son. So at the time, I was the closest to the scene, 5 minutes west on 78 West. So I get to the described area. It took me 10 minutes to find them. I approach the vehicle, see claw marks a half-inch deep in the van. I announce myself to them. They are hysterically crying. I'm trying to calm them down, and I ask where the bear is. They say it must have left because it heard you coming. I called emergency services. They were 20 minutes out. They did not want to get out of the car, as I assured them that it was gone, so I can see who is injured. Just then, I heard a low, powerful growl from behind me. I'm facing the family, my back to the woods. I'm looking at the husband's eyes grow as big as saucers. And at that moment, I knew the bear had returned. As I slowly turn around, I start to realize that this is not a bear. Standing 40 feet away on all fours was a monstrosity. It stood up and let out this roar which messed with my mobility. Couldn't move. Me with a pea shooter against an 8-foot beast. I'm the only thing between him and that family as I looked into those orangish, hellfired eyes, hair blacker than the night. I knew what its intentions were. I'm going to kill and eat you, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. Shooting it would just really upset it. I had no choice, so I took aim and headshotted. It charged, and I fired 2 rounds. I missed, the other grazing its ear. It started running in a zigzag pattern. I fired 3 more times. They missed. Fired 1 and hit it in the ass. It yelped. Fired 1 hitting it in the thigh, and it took off. Shortly after, EMS show up, and it never returned. Police report, deformed bear with rabies attack. Critically was fired upon and took off. A large amount of paperwork for firing my weapon and the amount of bullets used. I've had nightmares for months, finding me at home and ripping me to shreds. Well, that's all for my first encounter. Please email me if you have any other questions. I will send you my second encounter shortly. Same sub, second email. Jeff, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Also, I found out 80% of the police departments know about this and have certain organizations within the organization to take over cryptid reports because once I turned in my report, I spoke with a person who I had never met before, asking about specifics, his terms. I quote, "Tell me everything you can remember about this so-called black bear," which I did. After the questioning, I went to my supervisor asking him who was that and why so interested in the animal. His response is above all our pay grade to be sure to comply, and you'll be fine. At lunch tonight, I will send you my final encounter, which turned into a missing person and a government cover-up, I believe. Same subscriber, final email. Hey Jeff, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. Ever since my first encounter, I am heavily strapped 90% of the time with a high-powered pistol or rifle, always watching my 6, since I've been awakened to the new reality. My second encounter only happened by happenstance, because that night it was 40 minutes until my shift was over. There was some local officers responding to a young man in his mid-20s who threatened someone's life. This took place in the town of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. So as the 2 officers approached, he took off cutting through areas inaccessible to vehicles, then later got into a vehicle and took off. They were able to locate the vehicle, I believe was South Park in PA, minutes from the last known area. That's where I met up with the 2 officers, and we decided we were going to spend 30 minutes trying to locate who at the time was known as Michael Rickard. I went to my vehicle and grabbed my Desert Eagle and strapped my AR over my back. The 2 officers had this dude, "What the F? We don't think he's dangerous." I whispered back, "This isn't for him. 5 minutes into the search, I saw telltale signs that something was not right, and I urged the officers we should start heading back. So they start laughing, saying, "We got this, you're safe with us." Then in the distance, we hear a man screaming bloody murder, followed by a roar and a howl from another location. My sidearm is already unholstered, and we start our trek. We see this young man in the distance, running to us, and something is 100 yards away giving chase. As I was about to fire upon the one giving chase, another one had snuck up on us without a noise and stepped out of the brush. The officers were too afraid to unholster their weapons. It stood about 7 foot tall, 300 pounds. Brownish hair, shark-like teeth, large eyes, long muzzle like a German shepherd, and extremely ugly. I had a new target. First shot better count, as it was only 20 yards away. As I was getting ready to fire, I heard another scream and looked back in the direction where Michael and the Dogman were. They were gone. I looked back to the other, and it's gone. I was able to get the two officers to retreat with me back to our vehicles. We called our supervisors and told them what had just happened. They met up with us 7 miles from the station, and that same guy from my previous encounter was there with his partner. We were debriefed, and they told us that we were sworn to secrecy, that we were never here, never at a call, and now that is a missing persons case. So that encounter, those two encounters that he shared with us were from 2018. He had sent these encounters to me March of 2020. Crazy enough, April of 2020, human remains found near trolley tracks in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. The Bethel Park police chief tells Channel 11 human remains were found in brush near trolley tracks. The scene was near Route 88 meets Beagle Drive. The investigation turned over to Allegheny County Police and the medical examiner's office to determine more information. Police said the possible remains were found by a person walking near the area, and there is nothing suspicious so far in the investigation. The deceased was identified Tuesday as 27-year-old Michael Rickard. Now, when we were supposed to do the interview, it was around the end of March, beginning of April. And my last email to or from him was, I'd honestly love to come on your show, but my career comes first. And if I'm heard, I will be forced out of the troopers. So I can't blame him. And I'm just glad that he was able to share a couple of things that he's seen. I think I may reach out to him, see what's going on in the near future. Today's third subscriber, Pennsylvania submission. Hey Jeff, how's it going? My encounter happened while my family was sharing residence with close friends living in a very small town called Sayre, Pennsylvania. It was late summer of '86. I was 10 years old at the time. Sayre, Pennsylvania is so small it doesn't even have its own schools, meaning all the children in Sayre have to travel to another nearby town called Athens to attend school. That being said, I remember one day towards the end of summer where I had stayed home to help my mom with some of the necessary work around the house. And no, I was not happy about it being a typical 10-year-old. I wanted to be outside with my friends down the road. The people we were living with lived on the outskirts of Sayre on about an acre of land they owned, which also had a pond. They also had several dogs. that did make a fair amount of noise. So when they first started barking, neither my mom nor I thought anything of it, because they never barked for very long at anything. However, when they kept going and their barking seemed to intensify over the course of 15 minutes or so, my mom had had enough and told me to go see what was bothering them. I followed the sign of their barking as it was coming from the far side of the pond, 75 to 80 feet from the house. When I got close, I could see that all the dogs were barking at but not approaching the tree line on the other side, and they were all focused on one specific area of that tree line. In spite of this, I yelled at them to shut up and calm down, because I couldn't see anything they might be barking at. Well, they wouldn't listen to me. I started approaching them to drag them away from the trees by force, thinking if they got far enough away, they'd forget the squirrel or whatever they were barking at. I got within 10 feet from them, and I could see a little deeper into the tree line at this point. My first indication something was seriously wrong was the rustling of the brush. I froze in my tracks as thoughts of all normal predators that live in the area started to cross my mind, none of which would have caused the reaction this thing got from the dogs that had been going crazy just a moment before. I saw a bush that was almost as tall as I was move as something I couldn't quite see moved through the tree line, and I heard the deepest growl I had ever heard, and the sound seemed to last forever. I was terrified at this point, and all the dogs started to whimper and yip. They were moving back and forth with their tails between their legs and their heads cowering. I did vaguely remember something someone had told me to do when faced with a predator, and that was, you never turn and run. You always back away, throwing your arms up and make yourself look bigger. That must have either seemed like a challenge or extremely funny, because the thing stepped out where I could see most of it. It was covered head to toe in fur that was almost black, it was so dark. It had a wolf-like head mounted on what seemed to be an almost normal human body, if you ignore the fact that the chest seemed distorted and what looked like an abdomen was stretched to an unnatural length. It was standing upright on two legs rather than on all fours. I would guess this thing had to be at least 8 feet tall. However, I could be wrong. I just remember thinking how big this thing was compared to me, and I was only 10 at the time. I do remember the last I saw of it was when it looked at me for a few minutes while sniffing the air a couple of times. Then it did the last thing I expected. It gave me some kind of smile a normal dog would and disappeared into the woods. When it did that, the dogs all ran back to the house. I took the hint from them and ran my ass back to the house as well. By this time in my life, I had seen enough horror flicks to know without a doubt what I had just seen. I also knew no one would ever believe me, so when my mom asked what the problem was, I just told her the neighbor's dog, and it had run back home after I got control of our dogs. Today's fourth Pennsylvania subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, how are you? I live in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and I work in South Allentown, Pennsylvania at a Home Depot. My commute is usually 45 minutes, but it takes me 35 minutes to get there. I take back roads for 5 or 10 minutes, then I hop on the highway to 78 West for the rest of the way. Just like any other time I'm making my way to work, I'm going 45 and a 30. I hop on the ramp to 78. While on 78, I'm doing 10 above the speed limit. 15 minutes into my drive on the highway, I get pulled over. The officer asks why I'm on the road and was I aware of my speeding. My response was, "No, officer, and I work at Home Depot. I'm only a couple of minutes away," so I provided him the documents. As I'm giving him my license and stuff, I look in my rearview mirror, and I see two pair of orangish, yellowish eyes approach his vehicle, which is about 30 feet from mine. "WTF is that?" I say. The officer is like, "Yeah, right." I was like, "No, there are some sort of creature with orangish eyes approaching your vehicle." His eyes get huge, as if he knew what I was talking about. He turns and looks and hops into my vehicle and tells me to go. Well, I peel out. I'm hysterical. WTF was that? WTF was that? As we get 5 miles from the area, he asks me to drop him off at the station. There's another patrolman on duty. As he did, he told me these things are called Dogmen, and he's encountered them a couple times already. I didn't think they were after you, however. Always watch your surroundings and be armed if you can be. Then he tells me that YouTube has some videos on it to look it up. So I jump on, and it's been about a week since this encounter, and I binged your entire show for 3 days before I contacted you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I ended up going home that night as I was unable to process what I saw. Today's 5th Pennsylvania subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I'd like to thank you in advance for taking the time to share my experience. I really enjoy your channel and the information you share with us. I had an experience with something supernatural when I was 8 years old. I'm 37 now, and I've thought about this night often throughout the years as a bad dream. Until last month when I was having lunch with my mom. My experience was in '93, Philadelphia. My parents were remodeling the second floor of our house, so during the renovations, we were all camped out in the living room. My mom set up the air mattresses, tons of blankets, and pillows after dinner that night, so we could all just get some sleep. My dad would turn off the remaining lights downstairs, then mute the TV once my brothers and I were asleep. I woke up during the night. After everyone was asleep, I heard growling. I remember sitting up, and feeling scared. I turned my head toward the dining room and the kitchen. I saw 5 dogs. It was dark in the area, but I could clearly see black wolf-like dogs with glowing red eyes. They were pacing the room, but never took their eyes off of me. I was frozen, just sitting there, staring back, shaking in fear for a few moments until I could finally softly say, "Mom, Mom, Mom," over and over until she awoke. I remember my mom hugging me, telling me that I was safe, and as I said, "Do you see the dogs?" She hugged me tighter, saying it was just a dream, and I was safe to close my eyes and go back to sleep. I never spoke about that night until about last month. My mom and I were having lunch, and we were talking about the good old days and laughing, until I looked at her and said, "Mom, do you remember the night we were camping in the living room and I woke you up about the black dogs?" And before I could finish, her face turned completely white, and she said, "With the red eyes." I was a little worried looking at how pale she had turned and confused with the tone in her voice. I said, "What's wrong?" Trying to lighten the mood, I laughed and said, "It was just a dream, Mom." She turned and said with a straight face, "That was not a dream. I woke up and saw you sitting upright, staring into the dining room and kitchen area. When I turned to see what you were looking at, I saw these dark black dogs with glowing red eyes pacing back and forth and staring at you." She said even after she had me in her arms, their eyes were locked on me, still pacing. I never saw them again after that night. My mom refuses to speak about it anymore. She just looked at me straight in my eyes and said, "That wasn't a dream." She saw them as well, and she would like not to speak of it again. Well, Jeff, that's my experience, and now I know it wasn't a dream. I now spend my days wondering what it meant. The fear and confusion of what I was looking at that night will be with me until the day that I die. Maybe by sharing it with you, I can at least find someone with a similar experience. Today's 6th Pennsylvania subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, okay. My friend and his buddy went fishing at a creek in Washington County, PA, but before they left to go fishing, they stopped at a bar to get some beer. Then they headed to their fishing spot in the middle of nowhere and started pulling out their fishing poles, boxes, and chairs, ready for a long night of catfishing. And Buddy went back to the car to get more bait. and they heard a roar from the top of the hill. They felt it in their chest. They were like, "What is that?" Their hair was standing on end, and they came running down the hill like a herd of cows. Across the road jumped the creek. The creek they were fishing was 7 to 8 feet deep. The creature had to be at least 10 feet tall, splashing through the water, and jumped out and roared again. As they were in their car, they left everything and got out of there like a bat out of hell, burning rubber, all their fishing equipment left behind. The next day they came back for their stuff, and only one fishing pole was missing, probably because of the fish. They don't dare go ever back there at night. After he told me that story, I had tried to go down there fishing, but I can't get out of the car. Just an eerie feeling like something's watching you, but you can't see it. I've seen some caves up on the hill where it may have come from. Tonight's final Pennsylvania subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I'd like to share with you an experience only a few people have heard. It was the first Tuesday of Pennsylvania's deer rifle season, December 3rd, 2013. I've always been an avid hunter, and I would wake up very early in the morning to get out into the woods before daylight. I would be in the woods at 4:30 in the morning. Having to hunt on state game lands meant beating other people into the woods to get a decent spot. When I got to the parking area at around 4:15, no one else was there, so I walked into the woods not using a flashlight, only walking by the moonlight. I walked through a field into a tree line and started on a path to my spot. I came to an intersection in the path. One way went left and down the mountain, the other way went right. I went right because my spot was on the other side. Roughly 50 yards after making the right-hand turn, I smelled what I can only describe as hot garbage. It hit me right in the face, a hot dumpster juice in the middle of August. I stopped dead. I turned on my flashlight, expecting to see piles of garbage. Nothing, no garbage, nothing dead. Just a hot garbage smell. Keep in mind, it's December, it's cold out. High 20s, low 30s. So even if it was garbage, it shouldn't have smelled that bad. Keep in mind, I thought nothing of it. I followed the path to my spot, which was down over a ridge from the garbage smell, roughly 40 feet down. That leads into a grass field where I'd set up. I set my seat up, getting settled for 2 or 3 minutes. That's when rocks started coming down the ridge at me. First rock startled me, causing me to turn on my light again, scanning the field, hoping to see eye reflections of a deer, but nothing was there. I sat back down, another rock comes down the ridge. This time I stand up and go out into the grassy field with my flashlight and the pistol that I carry while hunting. Scanning again, nothing. Purposely waited in the field for a couple of minutes. Now I'm getting angry, assuming another hunter is messing with me because they think I'm in their spot or they want my spot. I sit down again. A third rock, sounding much larger than the others, comes tumbling down the ridge. I don't get up this time. Not 2 minutes after that, another rock, not tumbling, but sounding as if it had been thrown off the ridge, landed in the field. Now, screw this, I'm mad. I gather up my gear and start back toward the trail ridge. I get on the ridge and scan with my light the whole time. Nothing, no eyes, no other hunter. I get to the spot where I smelled the hot garbage. Nothing, the smell's gone now. Finally, it clicked in my head. It may not have been another person. Possibly something else. I've heard other stories of people's Sasquatch experiences, a lot of which remark about how bad they smell. Screw this. I all but ran out of those woods at that moment. And, to top it off, no other vehicles were in the parking area when I got out of the woods. This took place in Pennsylvania State Game Lands 229 outside of Tremont in Schuylkill County. I later come to find out that a coworker of mine had actually seen a bipedal cross in front of his car within 2 miles of my location. So, maybe they are real, I don't know. But I definitely had an experience I won't forget. Nah, I'm having too much fun with this. Bonus, Dogman, Pennsylvania subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, first off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself before going into my story of my personal encounter with the Dogman. My name is R, but most of my friends call me Bull. I'm an avid hunter, outdoorsman. I've always in the mountains doing something with nature. It was fall of 2020, and the Pennsylvania rifle season had opened the Saturday before, and as usual, my best friend and hunting partner, Jeff, had left my house about a half an hour south of where we had planned to hunt, our favorite mountain, in the Michoud State Forest, Adams County, PA, just above the town of Fairfield. I know, guys, there was a pause there. I'll fill you in on why the pause was there at the end. Sorry to interrupt. Now, right up the mountain is 90% dirt logging road. Travels up the mountain, no cell service. And here or there you pass an old hunting cabin, but they are few and far between. So as we start up the mountain, we had a small doe run across in front of my pickup truck. So we figured, hey, today may be a good day in the woods. We made it up the ridge to our pull-off. It was about 4:30 in the morning. At this point, get out of the truck, load up, and head for our stands. Now we have about a mile or so to walk into the woods before there's a fork in the trail where Jeff and I would split up and go off to our spot. But we keep communication via walkie-talkie radio. So I eventually reach my stand, get settled in for the morning. And it's your typical morning in the woods. Birds chirping, squirrels running around, the normal. I had sat there till about 10:30 in the morning and got a call from Jeff that he hadn't seen anything, nor had I. So we decided to head off the mountain and get some breakfast at the local diner down at the bottom. After breakfast, the weather had started to turn kind of rainy and gloomy, and Jeff decided he wasn't heading out for the evening sit that evening. So, after I had dropped him off at his truck, I headed back up for the evening. I reach our pull-off again about 2 in the afternoon. After just taking a drive around the logging road, seeing if I could see any deer moving across the ridge, I park the truck, shut the engine off, climb out, grab my pack, and head for my stand. After my walk in, I reach my stand at about 2:45, climb up, get settled in for the evening. A few hours pass. I hadn't seen much besides a spike buck and a small doe. And it's getting about the magic hour, the last 45 minutes before dark, when everything is starting to get on its feet, start moving about out of its bedding area. Well, about 5:15 or so, I guess I heard some things snap to my left, and I look up. I saw the ears of a doe coming through the mountain laurel, so I grab my 30-06 and get ready to take my shot. Well, she had walked out into a little opening, but had stopped just behind the laurel, so I waited. And she had poked her head out, but still no shot. Then I noticed the woods got silent. I'm talking no wind, birds, chipmunks, nothing made a sound. Then I heard a snap of a decent-sized twig, or stick, and I figured maybe a buck was following in the doe. Well, her head shot up here and stomped her hoof twice, and she bolted off into the woods. I mean, within seconds she was gone. Now, mind you, at this point I could see that underbrush and mountain laurel was starting to get dark, to the point it was hard to see into. So I was on watch for whatever had broken that stick. Then I started to get this musky smell, almost like dead animal and stagnant pond water and ammonia. Horrible. How now the idea where it was coming from, so I gathered my gear, got down, and made my way to the logging road. I started my trek back to my truck. On the way, I was about a quarter of the way out, and I had just gotten the feeling like I was being followed. Now I know the area has bears, coyotes, and the occasional mountain lion sighting, which was always shot down by the forest rangers and game wardens as people seeing bobcats, but I know better. So I shined my light around me and didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but still just had that feeling. So I picked up the pace and got back to the truck and was putting my gear into the truck except my rifle. I had started getting that smell again coming back up the logging road, so I shined my light up curiously to get a curiosity got the better of me, And I would say about 100 yards or so back, I saw two reddish orange eyes, which no normal animal has that kind of eye shine. So I yell, "Hey, go on, get out of here," at least 3 times, but nothing fazed it. So I raise my rifle and fire a shot into the area above. Then this beast stood up on its hind legs. Had to be somewhere between 7 to 8 feet tall, I guess, and you could make out pointed ears and elongated snout, and it let out the most god-awful guttural howl I had ever heard in my life. I threw my rifle in my truck and got down the mountain faster than I ever have, never looking back again to this day. I have not set foot on that logging trail since, not sure if I ever will again. All right, so the pause in the middle of the story. I was thinking about that very strange animal that was recently found in Pennsylvania. And, well, it was Adams County, I do believe. And it just kind of clicked in right there. Holy cow. Adams County, Fairfield. Oh my. You know, there is no coincidences in this field. You know that, right? But just an observation. Who knows? They still haven't announced the DNA yet, and they won't. I know that for a fact. They still haven't found that baby mammal that they called a mammal. They didn't call it anything, but I call it Dogman. Baby Dogman. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. With that, please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path of life. Until a little later on tonight for the paranormal side, my friends.